Well, somehow he decided that I was ready. Thanks. I just want to start with a song. I hope at the end of the speech you'll know what it's all about. I sing the body electric. I glory in the glow of rebirth. I toast to my own reunion when I shall embody the earth. And I'll look back on Venus, and I'll look back on Mars, and I'll join with the fire of 10 million stars. 'Cause in time, we will all be stars. That is from the musical. It's from the musical Fame. I always try to sing at the beginning of any one of my speeches in case the speech doesn't go well, at least you got something for your money. So, yes, I'm very grateful for that song. It's carried me through some pretty dark times. Let's see. Dobre. Dzień dobry. Good afternoon. It's very moving to be here in Poland, especially with my military history, 300 years on both sides. But to know what you all have suffered, what you have persevered, and what your future brings, evidenced today by these ideas worth sharing. You carry it off, dare I say, with a bearable lightness of being. Is it true that the last German Kaiser was born here? That's a lot to bear. That's a lot to bear. But you know, my thought is, everybody's been a baby in somebody's arms. Yeah? I was a baby in somebody's arms. Everybody steps into an up-and-running story. I stepped into his story. And I'm telling you, it was a doozy. You can't translate that. Anybody know who this is? General George S. Patton. Now, just take a good look, because I'll bet you somewhere the penny's going to drop. I checked it backstage. I was speaking with one of the organizers, and he said, yes, I know. It's all on Call of Duty. Many quotes like, I don't know, nobody made a good decision in a swivel chair. A bucket of blood, a bucket of sweat is worth a pint of blood, and so on and so forth. But I'm sure you can recognize at least something. The crop, the dog Willie, his name was William the Conqueror, but my grandfather had to name him Willie because he was such a coward of a dog. Of course, the tank, the binoculars, he was always looking ahead. And if he wasn't looking ahead, he was asking somebody else what they saw at the front lines. And believe me, he would trust a private more than he would trust his superiors sometimes. And of course, and in this picture, he's got 3 stars. The stars. You think of General Patton, you think of 4 stars. He died so soon after he received his 4th star at the end of the Second World War. It's just completely ironic. But before there was Patton, there was a little boy named Georgie. He was the grandson of one of the first pioneers to establish California, who rode across the United States marrying a squaw or 2 in order to save his life, an Indian squaw or 2 in order to save his life. He planted grapes, he planted oranges, he became Los Angeles' first mayor. But this was the grandfather of my grandfather, General Patton. So we had quite an illustrious history, going way back to the Civil War, going way back to the Scottish military watch, and yes, he He was on a long line of military men. And this boiled his blood. But nevertheless, he was a lazy, dreamy child. He had a severe dyslexia, which was soothed by listening to his father tell him stories at the foot of his knee about Achilles and Hector and the sword and the stone, King Arthur and the Round Table. And this just worked inside of him, and he thought, I'm part of this. I'm part of this story. In fact, he said, I feel as though I am a ship on the river of destiny going to a place that has not yet been named, that I'm supposed to be living in. And I must do 3 things. I must maintain my confidence, do my full duty, and I must follow my star. He was a fusion of opposites. He graduated from West Point, having failed math, so he graduated a year late. He entered into the pentathlon. Now this is 4 events, riding, swimming, running, and shooting, that he felt he actually had to master, so why not just join the Olympics to learn it? He was the first to enter the arena and nearly won the 400-meter dash, but he collapsed 50 meters before the end and blamed it on either partying too hard, I don't think any of you know what that would be like, or having an overdose of opium, because in those days, those kinds of things were allowed. Doping was allowed. And then he was disqualified from the pistol shooting contest, which really absolutely broke his heart. He grieved it to the end of his day. The final picture that was ever taken of him was in Sweden, contemplating why he was disqualified. There was no evidence of his bullet on the target. So it must have gone out of the park. But nobody else shot it out of the park, and Patton was notoriously a perfect shot. Could it be that his bullet actually passed through the original bullseye that he had shot? No one will ever know. No one will ever know. A fusion of opposites. He took that pistol, turned it in for another one, called the Colt 45 Peacemaker, and then proceeded to go down to Mexico and hunt down the Mexican bandit Pancho Villa. He didn't find Pancho Villa, but he found his henchman making love to his wife, shot him and another one, strapped him to the hood of his car, brought him to Black Shack Pershing, and laid them at the feet of this commander as if they were stags from a hunt, and then cried because he had taken this man from his wife. Hey, somebody should make a movie. He was an inventor of costumes. He developed a uniform that was going to be a forerunner to what the men in the tanks were wearing later on. He pieced it together from his football uniform. So you can imagine saying, so how do I look? How do I look? He turned the sword from round to straight because he said, attack, attack, attack is better. A good decision now is better than a perfect decision tomorrow. De l'audace, de l'audace, de l'audace. Go forward, go forward, go forward. He learned his perfect French in France when he studied tanks. He brought that information back to America just in time for the Americans to get into World War I with their tanks. He was the first tank commander. This was the first time Americans had fought on foreign soil. Ironically, his tank didn't make it up the hill. And here come the Germans. And he's got a whole battalion saying, what do we do now? Well, he says, we've got to make a run for it. Are you kidding me? You're going to stay in your foxhole? You dig your foxhole, you dig your grave. Better to die for something than live for nothing. If you stay here, you will die. If you go, you may live. He was one of 2 that lived. The other one that lived saved his ass. And I mean literally, he was shot in the butt and dragged, ironically, again, to a foxhole. I've seen that foxhole. It's still there. I can show it to you. A fusion of opposites. And yes, somebody ought to make a movie. And yes, somebody did make a movie. In 1970, Francis Ford Coppola, Godfather, Apocalypse Now, penned the screenplay, along with others, of Patton. It won 7 Oscars. And it was an ironic twist in a very difficult time. Of course, the Vietnam War was in full swing. My father was a part of that war. He was in it at the time. I think he might have flown back to see the movie. Go back and forth and back and forth. And you can imagine for a 7 to 11-year-old child, this was just heaven when Daddy came home. The movie. It sometimes was double billed with MASH, which some of you must remember. But my brother was flattening his hair with my mother's silk stockings, while my sister was singing, wham, bam, bam, what are we fighting for? You know, I don't give a damn when you talk about Vietnam, Dad. While my mother was combing her hair and singing, the moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. And dutiful daughter, alone in her room, practicing for when Daddy comes home, fighting soldiers from the sky. You like it? Men who live to jump and die. 100 men will test today, but only one is the Green Beret. That's for you, Dad. Mom tucked me in the night before the film came out, and as she did, kissing me goodnight, saying, now listen, tomorrow our name is going to be all through the papers, and people will come to you and ask you if you really are related to General George S. Patton. I want you to remember something. You did nothing to deserve this, and you are not to take any credit. Just stay simply you, simply me. What's simple about having a movie made about your grandfather? It's kind of cool. A movie made about my grandfather. What does this make me? All right. I saw the movie, and I fell asleep. It was so boring to a young girl. And I thought to myself, but why? Why isn't somebody making a movie about my dad? My dad. My hero in Vietnam. And my mom said, because he was in the wrong war? We were stationed in Europe at the time, so the intensity of my grandfather's already heightened fame, because I think we were at a 25th anniversary of the end of the war, and so people were making a special effort to commemorate. Added with this film was just incredible. We were marching with ambassadors, mingling with royalty. We had dinner with the Familie Bécotte-Foch, whose grandfather had signed the armistice at the end of the Great War. This was amazing. But my father, he did something very, very special when he would be with us on those occasions. He would take us to the battlefields, and he would say, I want you to see the real thing. Normandy, the D-Day beaches, the triangle of desolation in Bastogne, where my grandfather was looking in that very first picture. And Verdun, a city that had endured a year and a half of constant pummeling. And the fields around Verdun. Hey, look at the way those bayonets are still sticking out of the ground. Can you believe those glass cabinets just filled with bones? You know those clumps of trees? Could be that under there's a mass grave. Really? And then my father's own war experience would come into it. I remember one day, I was cold. Dad, I'm cold. You're not cold. I'm cold. Damn it, you're not cold. My troops are cold. They're cold. They need me right now. You don't need me. You don't need me holding your hand. You don't need me opening Christmas presents. They're cold. They need me. You will never, ever, ever be cold again. What could I do? I couldn't go to Vietnam, and I wasn't allowed to be cold. So I placed it all into acting and singing. And I sang and sang. I was very much helped by our housekeeper. Her name was Dorothea Schönwasser. She was a refugee from the Second World War, had fled the Third Reich, and she was our maid. But she wasn't. Nein, ich war nicht. I am not a maid. I am not a maid. I am your housekeeper. In fact, I was an actress on the Berlin stage and in Breslau. And Helen, you lift your shoulders when you breathe. I don't like it. You will never be a great actress if you lift your shoulders when you're breathing. Thank you, Dorothea. You know, she had no idea how to cook or clean. But when my father said, do you think you can take care of this family? She said, why not? And did 3 cartwheels on the living room floor. And she got the job. She lived with us until her death. My grandfather's greatest nemesis was Erwin Rommel, but he was also my grandfather's greatest hero. You know, the desert fox? So you've got old blood and guts versus the desert fox. And I think both of them, not only my grandfather, dreamed of connecting after the war to discuss what it had been like, to discuss the battles. Well, and that was not possible for either of them because both of them died during very dubious situations when Rommel was forced to take a cyanide tablet because he had been part of the von Stauffenberg assassination attempt. And of course, my grandfather had a very mysterious and well-known car accident that is still trying to be unraveled. So this was not able to happen, but it did happen through their sons. My father and my grandfather became best friends. My father and, that too, my father and Rommel's son became best friends, and they shared even a birthday together on Christmas Eve. So we would spend Christmas Eve with my grandfather's enemies' family as one family. So it was as right as rain, as we say in English, as simple as breathing, that I would have married a German later on. And we produced 2 incredible boys who now have on their shoulders the job of continuing to peel this onion, to find out, I hope, that heroes come in many, many forms, and that their German ancestors, who also were in the war, are a part of the same fabric. I went on to establish 3 organizations: Patton Trust, Patton Foundation, Patton Enterprises. The Patton Trust bridges cultures through producing or creating shared experiences between them. We've brought Bosnians and Croats and Serbs together. We've brought Palestinians and Israelis together, writing songs together. The comment was, I've just written a song with my enemy. It's going to be very hard to kill them now. We produced a scholarship program. We produced a scholarship program for Dorothea Schönwasser. It's called the Dorothea Schönwasser Scholarship. And I'm very, very happy that that happened. Excuse me. I'd just like to end this song, this moment, with a song and a poem that was written by my own son. And the song was written by a little boy in Verdun who was part of a team of a theater project to bring my grandfather's story to light. Those are the kids in the theater project. O Stern, o Leben, o Lust, wo bringt ihr mich hin? Ich weiß nicht genau, wo ich bin. Die Schilder sind überall. Aber die bringen mir bloß fern. O Leben, o Lust, bring mich zu meinem Stern. Life, desire, where are you bringing me? There are signs everywhere. Please, finally bring me to a star.